It was the cold spring of 1876 when the Donnelly family arrived in Montana. The valley looked peaceful, silent hills, wide skies, and pine trees standing like ancient guards. Patrick Donnelly, his wife Mary, and their 3 children dreamed of a new beginning. But the land they bought had a history, one whispered only at night by the locals. They said the valley belonged to those who never left. Their new farmhouse stood miles from the nearest neighbor. Mary noticed right away, no birds sang here. The silence was thick, and every night, wind howled through cracks in the wooden walls like someone whispering secrets. On the 3rd night, Patrick found hoofprints around the barn, but no horses were missing. The prints circled the house and ended at the back door. At first, they blamed wild animals, but then the youngest daughter, Ellen, began talking to someone they couldn't see. Every night before bed, she whispered, "She's outside, Mama. She's cold." Mary shivered every time. No one else lived nearby, and yet every night, they heard the same faint knocking, 3 soft knocks always at the same door. One night, Patrick finally opened that door. The cold wind rushed in and nothing stood outside. Only muddy footprints led toward the woods. At the end of the trail, something glimmered under moonlight, a broken rosary. Mary gasped. She recognized it instantly. It belonged to her sister, the one who died 10 years ago back in Ireland. That night, the family gathered in the living room. The fire burned low. Ellen stared into the flames and whispered, "She's not outside anymore." The candlelight flickered. Everyone turned toward her. She looked up slowly and said, "She's in the house." Then every light went out, and the screams that followed were never spoken of again. By the next morning, the Donnelly home stood silent. Mary woke to find muddy handprints smeared across the hallway walls, and 2, small for Patrick, too large for Ellen. The house smelled like damp soil and something else, something metallic. Patrick searched the barn again. The horses were trembling, their eyes wild, their breath white in the cold air. In the corner of the barn, a mirror, old, cracked, that neither of them had ever seen before, and written on it, in something dark and sticky, were the words, "I remember you, Mary." Mary screamed and called Patrick, but when he came, the words on the mirror were gone. Only his reflection remained, trembling and distorted. That night, Ellen began sleep-talking. Her voice changed, deeper, older. She said we took her land. She said the roots remember her blood. Patrick grabbed his Bible, reading verses aloud, but every word made the walls creak louder, the air colder. When he looked up, the Bible pages were fluttering, as if being turned by unseen hands. Desperate for answers, Mary visited the nearby town. The locals avoided her, and until one old man finally spoke. He told her about the Red Valley Curse. The land once belonged to a woman accused of witchcraft. They buried her alive. Right beneath the farmhouse Mary now called home. Mary's hands trembled. "What was her name?" the old man whispered. "Clara Donnelly." Mary froze. That was Patrick's grandmother's name. Back at the farmhouse, Patrick found a hidden door under the floorboards. Inside, bones wrapped in rosary beads, and a faded locket with his family name engraved. When he picked it up, the lantern blew out. A voice whispered in the dark, "I am not your curse. I am your blood." Then Ellen began laughing upstairs, not like a child, but like an old woman. Every candle in the house lit itself at once, and on the mirror one new message appeared. "Welcome home, Clara." Outside, the wind screamed across the valley. The farmhouse stood burning with unseen light, shadows dancing in the windows. And for the first time since they arrived, the Donnelly family was no longer alone, but none of them knew yet that the real horror wasn't the ghost beneath the floorboards. It was what was growing inside their bloodline. The next morning, the farmhouse looked normal again, but Patrick felt something strange. His hands were shaking, his veins darker than before. Mary noticed too. When she touched his arm, he flinched, and as if her touch burned. Ellen, the youngest, didn't eat. She only stared at the walls, humming the same old Irish lullaby that no one had taught her. Her voice wasn't her own anymore. That night, Patrick dreamed of a woman buried alive, her fingernails scraping against a coffin lid. When he woke, dirt was under his fingernails. Mary began searching old family records. In a cracked leather Bible, she found something horrifying. The Donnelly family tree had names crossed out in red ink, and beside them were words, "Blood returned to the soil." Every 3rd generation, one member of the family had disappeared without a trace. always after moving to a new land, and always following strange dreams of a woman beneath the earth. Mary realized the pattern matched their arrival. It was the third generation again. That night Patrick began speaking in his sleep. But it wasn't English. The words were Old Gaelic, the same language. Clara spoke before she was executed for witchcraft. Ellen stood by the window again, whispering, "Grandmother Clara says the roots are ready." Mary tried to wake her, but the moment she touched Ellen, blood trickled down the child's nose. Her eyes turned pure black. Then she smiled and in Clara's voice said, "It's time to finish what they started." Patrick, now fully consumed, began digging near the barn. Claiming he heard voices calling from below, Mary begged him to stop, but he just kept whispering, "She's family, Mary, she wants us home." Hours later, he unearthed a coffin wrapped in iron chains. The moment he touched it, thunder rolled across a clear sky. The ground trembled, lanterns shattered, and Ellen screamed. A scream that wasn't human. The coffin lid cracked open from the inside. Inside the coffin wasn't a body, only a mirror. When Patrick looked into it, his reflection blinked after him. Then the voice spoke again, calm, maternal, and terrifying. "You carry my face now. You carry my curse." Mary watched in horror as Patrick's reflection smiled, but he didn't. She dropped the lantern. The fire spread fast, and as the flames reached the coffin, it didn't burn. It began to breathe. By dawn, the barn was gone, ashes and silence. Only the mirror remained untouched, lying in the mud. Ellen walked toward it barefoot, humming that same lullaby again. She picked it up, looked into it, and whispered, "Now it's my turn." In her reflection, a pale woman smiled back. 23 years passed. The old Donnelly farmhouse was gone, rebuilt into a new home by distant relatives. They never knew what happened that burning night. But one thing remained buried beneath the soil: the mirror. When the new family moved in, their little boy Samuel found it while playing near the barn ruins. He brought it home laughing, and that night the house went silent. The boy's mother, Clara Donnelly, yes, another Clara, hung the mirror in the hallway. She said it made the house feel alive. But soon she noticed reflections moving a second slower, sometimes faster. When Samuel stood before the mirror, his reflection often stayed even after he walked away, and every night he whispered in his sleep, "Grandmother says I look just like her." One evening, Clara cleaned the mirror, but behind the cracks she saw something impossible. A second house burning, a man screaming her name, and a little girl humming a lullaby. The same lullaby from 1876. Then she noticed the reflection of the mirror's background wasn't her home. It was the old Donnelly farmhouse, still on fire. Clara tried to break the mirror, but the glass wouldn't shatter. Instead, the reflection began to move on its own. The figure of a man appeared, whispering, "You finished the circle." Blood to blood, soil to soil. The walls around her began to drip dark red. Not blood, but soil soaked in centuries of screams. Samuel walked in, eyes black, voice cold. "She's home now, Mama." The reflection reached out, literally stepping through the glass. It wasn't Clara anymore. It was Mary Donnelly, still wearing ashes from the old fire. She whispered to the new Clara, "You kept my blood alive. Now I'll keep yours forever." The next morning, neighbors found the mirror clean and shining. But the family was gone. Only footprints led into the reflection, and never came out. Years later, a photographer bought that same mirror at an estate auction. He placed it in his studio in New York. Every portrait he took showed a faint figure standing behind the subject, a pale woman in ashes humming a lullaby. The photographer went missing 2 months later. The mirror? Still missing. Some say it's still out there, waiting for another Donnelly, or someone who looks too long. 148 years later, the cursed Donnelly mirror resurfaced. Not in Montana, but on an online auction site in New York City. A popular horror YouTuber, Evan Cross, bought it for a Halloween special. He called it "Testing the World's Most Haunted Antique Live." Millions tuned in. They thought it was fake, until the reflection started moving. Without him. At first, everything looked normal, but viewers noticed something strange. Evan's reflection blinked a second later. Then in one frame, the reflection smiled, while Evan didn't. The live chat exploded. "Bro, your reflection just smiled. Pause at 14:23, look behind him." Evan laughed nervously. He said it was lag. But the smile never left the reflection. That night, Evan posted a video titled, "It Followed Me Home." He showed scratches on his studio wall, in the shape of a handprint. When he zoomed in, the fingerprint line spelled one word: Donnelly. Then came the whisper, faint but real. You look just like her. The same line that cursed every generation before. Evan's final upload was never finished. He was recording when his camera suddenly went static. In the last few seconds, viewers could see a woman's silhouette behind him, covered in ashes, holding the mirror. The screen flickered. Then his reflection turned toward the camera and whispered, "She's home now." The stream cut out. No one ever found Evan. But his reflection still uploads videos. 2 weeks later, Evan's subscribers reported something terrifying. Every time they paused his last video, they saw their own faces in the reflection, even when the camera never pointed at them. Some claimed to hear a lullaby playing softly through their phones. Even with the video closed, police deleted his channel, but the mirror's last upload still reappears every October 31st, no matter how many times it's removed. And if you're watching this, maybe it's already found you.